Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming. Welcome to this month's session of the Health Tech Entrepreneurs Meetup Series. Today we have Dr. Chris Bailey, Aryaman Gupta, and Dr. Cliff Weiss, all from Johns Hopkins, and they're going to be talking about how they got their startup up and running as busy practicing physicians. And I'm sure there'll also be lessons for all of us other busy founders. So we'll get started with our usual intro. I'm going to go down the names to my right. And so when I call on you, if you'd like to introduce yourself, please unmute. Let us know who you are, what you're working on, if there's any issues you're facing, if you have any asks, or if you have anything to offer the group, this is a good chance to let us know. And I'll save the speakers for afterwards, for after all of the other intros. So I'll start with myself. Hi, I'm Neo Gamo. I am the founder and CEO of Neurosonics Medical. We're developing a miniaturized therapeutic ultrasound device for minimally invasive neurosurgery. I'm also the VP of Business Development at the MDC Studio, which is a startup studio downtown Baltimore dedicated to building health and medtech companies. I'm also an associate with the Verte family of funds. We focus on investing in high growth companies located in opportunity zones across the country. All right, Bucci.
Hello, everybody. I'm Buchetre. I'm a research physician at Hopkins in gynecology obstetrics. I'm also CEO and co-founder of Hope Diagnostics. It's a microRNA-based diagnostic kit to determine quality of human oocytes for individuals seeking IVF care, pre-fertilization. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Carlos? All right, Chrissy.
Hi, I'm Chrissy. I'm a postdoc at Hopkins, working in microfluidics and bioengineering. We developed a platform that we're using for both cancer diagnostics application and antibiotic susceptibility testing for bacterial infections. Great, welcome. Christina?
Hi, everybody. I'm part of the Johns Hopkins Tech Ventures team. I have a role in technology development, and I'm coming to Hopkins just having started in January, most recently from GE Healthcare. So happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Welcome. Cyrus?
Yes, hi, I'm Cyrus. I'm a mechanical engineer in background with started a company doing product development 15 years ago. We're involved in a variety of products, including medical devices, instruments, and tools. Nice to meet everyone.
Awesome. Gil?
So I'm the founder of the MDC Studio and a couple of other companies. I'm an engineer by background, and I teach at University of Maryland, College Park for 3 more months.
Wonderful. Jeff, Gare?
Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm the founder of a medical prosthesis startup company. I also am a principal engineer at MDC, and I'm working with Cliff and Chris and Ariman on the Shuriken team.
Awesome. Jonathan?
Hi, Jonathan Klaus, registered nurse, just interested in learning more about the space.
Great, welcome. Martina?
Hi, I have just finished my dissertation in functional medicine, and I am very much focused on Alzheimer's prevention. And I would like to understand a little bit more about the whole context of people startup in health tech. And so this is my first time in this meetup.
Great, welcome, good to have you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Sandy?
Everybody, Sandy Williams. Also my first health tech entrepreneurs meetup. So I'm a biomedical engineer by training, and I'm also the president and founder of Access Biomedical Solutions, which is my consulting company. So I help biotech and medtech companies with their go-to-market strategy.
Great, welcome also. Vin?
Hi, everyone. My name is Vin Menden. I am currently an independent consultant, primarily with like nonprofits and social enterprises. So very new to the health tech space. I'm in the DC area, just looking to learn more. Happy to be here.
Great. Wayne?
Hi, Wayne Sternberger. I'm a systems engineer, recently retired from Johns Hopkins APL. I'm co-founder and CTO of Block Synop, which we just celebrated its second anniversary. So I'm not sure where the cut line is between startup and no longer a startup, but we still consider ourselves a startup. We're developing and commercializing a non-invasive, passive, continuous real-time objective, and all those other good words, neuroblockade monitor for use in clinical applications.
Great. I think that's everyone except for the speakers. So I will introduce the speakers now. So Drs. Bailey and Dr. Weiss are interventional radiologists at Johns Hopkins with extensive experience in working with patients with feeding tube, while Mr. Gupta is a medical student with an engineering background and many years of startup experience, and they have formed a team and they're founders of Shuriken Medical. So I'll hand it off to the speakers now. So yeah, please introduce yourselves and tell us about what your company's doing.
Chris, why don't you start?
Yeah, so I'm Chris Bailey, interventional radiologist at Hopkins, and our company is a direct extension of our clinical work. And what I mean by that is that when the whole genesis of the idea for this came from us looking at the procedures that we were doing in the lab, in particular, the idea that we were looking at is enteric feeding devices. And for those who aren't familiar, there are a lot of patients who require a tube in order to receive nutrition if they have issues with swallowing, issues with reflux, dysphagia, and the like. And we as interventional radiologists not only place but maintain these tubes. One particular tube is a gastrojejunostomy tube, which is a tube that essentially goes through the stomach to the jejunum. The problem with these tubes are that they're quite long, they frequently clog, and they require a whole interventional procedure without getting into the nitty-gritty details in order to exchange them, which is something that Cliff and myself do all the time. What we realized is that there's a lot of not only procedural time, but radiation exposure and just healthcare waste that happens in doing this procedure. So that's really where the genesis of our idea came from, was coming up with a novel solution to get rid of as many of these procedures as possible and take them out of the procedural radiation suite to the bedside.
Great, thank you so much. Cliff, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Cliff Weiss. I've been attending at Hopkins for about 13 years, and I've been here for about 26 years. I'm the medical director of our Center for Bioengineering, Innovation, and Design, and I've had a couple attempts at some startups in the past, but haven't made it too far. Chris and one of his co-residents and I were sitting around one day and really realized that we thought we had a place we could innovate that would save patients time and radiation and get some of these procedures, which frankly are life-saving, but can be challenging, eat up a lot of room time, and we can be spending our time on higher value targets. We can get these out of the room. We can save patients and their caregivers lots and lots of time and money, save the health system money, and get higher value procedures in the room at the same time. And so it seemed like it was a win for everybody. And the question was, how are we going to do it? And so I've been doing this in the School of Engineering for a long time, and again with a couple startups outside of the School of Engineering. We thought we'd take a different route this time and try to actually be successful.
Great. Ariman?
Yeah, hey everybody. Like I mentioned, my name is Aryaman Gupta. Currently a medical student at Johns Hopkins. I did my undergraduate degree in biomedical engineering at Duke, where I also worked on a startup related to low-cost laparoscopic technology. And then I came here, everyone pointed to Dr. Weiss. He's really, one of the best at Hopkins in the area. for medical devices and device design. And so I met him and Chris, and we really took this idea that they had and figured out how to make this into a viable prototype and company. And so we've been doing that for the past about year or so. It's been a fantastic journey.
Yeah, so it's actually only been a year, and I'm pretty impressed that I've watched you guys form and then progress, and I've been pretty impressed with how quickly you guys moved. Like, you built a team, you've already raised some funding, you've done customer discovery, and you've already got some sort of prototype, or you're working on the prototype. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey thus far?
I think, Chris, you and Andrew and I sat down and literally drew this concept out on a piece of paper, and sent it into Tech Ventures, and then and then we shopped around for somewhere to do the work, because realistically, Chris and I are super busy. Chris was in residency at the time, so he was super busy clinician. And I have lots of hats, and I've known from the past, if I take my finger off the switch for too long, things either stall or go the wrong direction. And we didn't think we really didn't want this to stall. We thought this was a simple enough idea and an important enough idea that we wanted to move forward. And I think from there, Chris, we started looking around for places that could help us beyond just give us advice, right?
Yeah, we had a napkin drawing, and we in principle didn't know initially. Well, we were very honest with ourselves that there was no way that the two of us alone could do prototyping, actual beyond CAD design, actually making this tube. So yeah, that's what ended up leading us toward MDC, because we knew that we needed some resources to help us get to that next step.
Yeah, Gil, I think you saw one of this napkin drawing. So what did you do with that napkin drawing, and like, how did you build on that to what Shuriken is today?
Yeah, I'm looking for the napkin drawing. I have it on the slide. So if I find it, I'll send it over. So what we like, or some of us like at MDC, are projects at the very beginning. So we've taken quite a few projects which are at the stage of a drawing or a concept, and built them up. So we have a sort of methodology for doing that. By and large, we look to see if the idea has medical value. Are we interested in the technology or the people? More the people so much than the technology. And could we make it? Could we contribute something to it? And the idea that Chris and Cliff and Ariman had fit all of those categories. And so it was for us a no-brainer. Ariman, despite his sad engineering education at Duke, a basketball school, not a really good engineering school, I would say, proved to be extremely good engineer. I don't know how you pulled it off, Ariman, but it was amazing. And so that's one of the other things we look for in a startup. Is there someone that can really drive the project? So Neo drives her project. Jeff is the driver of his project. Ariman was in the office with tube technology, ideas on how to build it. Cliff and Chris are very engaged in the program. So those are what we look for: engagement, something that has value in society, and good people to work with. So.
And thank you, Gil. Can you tell us about how you got funding already, and also you've done also a lot of customer discovery, and what's the status of your prototype now?
So Chris, why don't you jump in to cover and discuss? Our funding has come from Tech Ventures, right? So right now we've won the Visciati Award, and we are moving forward with our aims from that grant at pretty high speed. That's the primary source of our funding has all been from within Johns Hopkins so far.
Yeah.
Great.
And as far as customer discovery goes, we obviously started with, locally with our own colleagues who are interventional radiologists, gastroenterologists, and other clinicians who take care of these patients who have enteric feeding devices. But we realized that we obviously had to formalize it and do some more. So we looked at the I-Corps program, and we actually participated in the regional I-Corps program, which was fantastic. And we had a lot of useful lectures on, things that are completely out of our wheelhouse. But through the program, we actually did a lot of additional customer discovery far beyond the realm in Baltimore, across, multiple states, patients, providers, different type of clinicians, to really, not only hone in our initial idea of this napkin drawing, but also there are a lot of different considerations that we didn't even think of that were hindering this space, that helped affirm and also shore up our idea. So that was, and our decision to go to the regional I-Corps was purely it was a balance of, all three of our time, because, we just, from a clinical standpoint, I don't think that Cliff, myself, or Ariman could have participated in the national I-Corps. So we thought the regional would be a good start for us to get that done.
Yeah, because I was wondering, because you guys are already experts in the field, but do you still find doing the customer discovery with other people, other experts in your field, still useful?
Yeah, I mean, I can answer that. The answer is 100% yes, right? Number one, we're experts in our field at one institution, a very special institution that does things its own way. And I don't have any idea what it's like to be an interventional radiologist in Oklahoma, or what it's like to be a patient who's taking care of one of these tubes, or a patient's parent. And one of the things I always teach the engineering students at Hopkins is great, and we can show you a lot of cool stuff. And once you've done that, leave and go to other places, either locally or outside the system farther away, and figure out if what you've figured out still makes sense, right? And so to do this without that customer, honestly, the customer discovery was amazing. What Chris discovered during I-Corps, I mean, it was very affirming, which is wonderful, but we were ready for it to blow us apart too, if it did. So, I mean, and we got great interviews from patients. We actually did interviews based on Facebook sites for patients with feeding tubes. We did interview from a Twitter feed for patients with feeding tubes. We talked to interventionalists. We talked to surgeons, and we talked to gastroenterologists, and then a ton of a whole variety of caregivers. So it was really good to get the information, and the more we heard, the more we thought we were on the right track.
Awesome.
Yeah, I mean, to add to that,
Go ahead.
we found that 95% of people that we spoke to were extremely enthusiastic about our products. So that's something that, like Dr. Weiss said, that gave us more motivation and energy, and really proved to us that what we're doing has value, and will make a difference in these patients' lives.
That's awesome. Ariman, I think you've been, pretty involved with the prototyping. Can you tell us a bit more about your journey with the prototype?
Sure. So we actually recently just got our, first prototype in hand. We signed with a subcontractor out on the West Coast, and it's been an amazing process. And Jeff has been instrumental. While I have a undergraduate background in engineering, Jeff brings a whole different level of experience and insight into this process. So we've been lucky to have him on the team and on board. So we've been going back and forth and making a couple iterations. So we're excited to see what edits we're going to keep making onto the prototype and keep moving forward.
Yeah, and I will say a couple of things. You sell yourself a little bit short, right? So we did this over the summer with Ariman as a summer student in my lab, and he really worked in at MDC as an extension, and really with a bunch of tubing and glue and lubricants that he got from various vendors, with a lot of help from the MDC engineers. including building a quote unquote model of the GI tract, we were able to actually get us far enough along to realize that our idea wasn't totally crazy, right? And we got a CAD drawing done that made sense for us at the time, which was based off of our napkin drawing. So don't send that napkin drawing out yet. Our IP just got filed, okay? And that has evolved into literally a prototype that looks like what you made in CAD, right? And there's a ton of flaws in it, and that's great. Like, we got it back, and the fact that it even worked 20% of what we wanted, and it was much closer to 50% of what we wanted, was amazing. And then we sat down with Jeff and realized all the mistakes we made as doctors and not engineers, and we're rebuilding it now. And we actually engaged with the prototyping people, with the actual manufacturers this week, to say, okay, we don't want to go any further if you can't build what we want to build, and tell us based on your knowledge, and based on what Jeff's ideas could come through, what will actually work to manufacture, and when let's make sure we're thinking a few steps down the road. So we were thrilled to get our first prototype kit in, and to realize that it wasn't a stupid idea.
Awesome. So how do you balance doing all of this while you're full-time physicians or students, and how do you decide who does what in the team?
Well, I would say that the way that we get around a lot of it is that fortunately the three of us are pretty close, and we've developed a nice relationship where we can kind of work in tandem throughout the day. So if we're trying to get a task done, for example, writing the Bishotti grant, we were doing that, in between cases, and Ariman in between his clinical work, and just kind of, communicating with each other via text, via email, and doing the best that we could there. And then our meetings, we just try and, we do what we can do. We do them after hours, especially when we meet for updates with MDC, who have been great with accommodating, our schedule too, and being there to support us as well.
Right. And to be, Ariman put a tremendous amount of effort into documentation and into actually doing a lot of the on the ground work for getting words on paper. And then Gil and the folks at NBC helped us get it off the ground as well, both Bishotti and our SBIR. And so, again, one thing that we were really ignorant about from the beginning was all the business side. And that we really took a tremendous amount. We used MDC as a huge, it's beyond a crutch. It's actually a walker, because we really didn't have any idea what we were doing from that perspective. And so, yeah, and at this point, having Jeff part of the team as well, I think we have a very dynamic way of moving forward, because now Ariman's gotten super busy again too, because he's now in clinical rotations. He's not on his basic and clinical sciences. But to be honest with you, I mean, I think Gil set us straight early on. If this is something you want to do, you got to meet regularly. You got to be, committed to it, and we got to really make sure that we, you don't miss meetings, and we push things forward. The beauty is, at this point, though, I think we have enough duplication in skills that if Chris can't make something, I can make it, and if I can't make something, Chris can make it, and same with Jeff and Ariman. And so I think we really have enough duplication and enough, ability to make these things as a group. So it's not always just, everyone making it all the time.
So how did you, do you have any tips for people coming from a clinical or research background on learning, getting your head around these business concepts, and like, where did you even start?
Yeah, I mean, not to keep going back to it, but honestly, working through with MDC really, helped us, because as Cliff and I said, we really truly, with a clinical question that we knew was, at least to our degree, not valid based on our clinical practice, and a drawing. I think a lot of just kind of reading about when you hear, some new term or a new grant, or, even a new funding agency. I mean, just getting all of the registration together to get the company together was a tremendous, just learning what has to, be filed for in order to go for government contracts and the like. I mean, I can't point to a specific resource, but yeah, it was just as things came up, we kept working through it.
Mhm.
We also were able to reach out to some of our former bioengineering students at Hopkins who have actually had successful startups and even exits at this point, and asked some advice about, you know, what we should be doing, where and when. And we've spoken also to some folks like Brian Stansky at Tech Ventures, who are able to also point us in some directions. And when certain names keep cropping up over and over again in the space, it's quite clear those are the people you want to be speaking to.
Mhm.
So when we heard that, when Gil was giving us a name of a consultant and we got the same name from Tech Ventures, we realized that was probably, you know, for example, we're looking to have an FDA, a conversation with the FDA about what our animal trial might look like. Okay. And so for that to happen, we really need to put the right paperwork together. Well, we found the right consultant. We interviewed a couple of people and then decided to go with the person that everyone was recommending uniformly. But you know, this is where I think my other two startups that I did sort of with students, but without support died, right? It died because we had a good idea. We had reasonably good IP. It was probably filed properly. We just didn't know what to do with it at that point. We didn't have the engineering support to start building, and we didn't have the business support to make sure we were structured properly.
I see. And Ariman, you also have some startup experience, right?
I do. And to kind of, finish off this earlier point, I think it's just an entire new beast. I think one example that I can speak to personally is how different, something as simple as grant writing can be versus academic writing. With having experience written some papers and, things, you should see my first draft of our Bishadi grant. It looks like I'm trying to publish it in some journal and it's just absolutely wrong.
Yeah.
It's not, what we needed. And so then having kind of that background between Dr. Weiss, Dr. Bailey, and DC to go over those specifics and hone it. So it's very different. And then as for your question about prior startup experience, yes. So back in college, I was the engineer for a startup where we developed a low-cost laparoscope for low-income countries. And that was a great exposure to what this space looks like. That project was also born out of a lab made up of a multidisciplinary team of physicians and engineers, very similar to what we're doing. And so I was able to really see what kind of time and effort is needed to take something like this off the ground. It really is almost like a second job at times. And that's where, the reason I think Shuriken has been successful as it has been is, like Chris mentioned, we find those times outside, when others, when it just might not be the most comfortable, the easiest. I've texted with Dr. Weiss and Dr. Bailey at, random hours of the day, asking them to review materials or for us to, really write something up. So I was able to see that in that first startup, and, thankfully that's, been successful as well. And, but so those are the things I would add.
Awesome. Gil, I'd love to hear from your perspectives as well. Like, do you have tips on, researchers or clinicians, trying to pick up like the, and trying to start this commercialization process?
Sure. So MDC was created initially with 6 surgeons at the University of Maryland. All of them had inventions which hadn't gone anywhere, and all of them are very busy. So what we realized early on is we need to have the inventors involved as much as possible, but they're not going to have that much time to come over and work with us on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis. So you need a key person that you can associate with them. It can be someone that comes from our staff. So we've loaned people 2 startups. I think Jeff has been in 2 or 3 so far. Jeff, I lost track already. So Jeff goes in, he does wonderful work. Thank goodness he comes back. But you need somebody there who can keep track of what the pathway is. And then you need simple, what I would call simple support. We look for government funding because the ideas are very early. So we go after NSF, NIH, DOD, SBIR contracts, TEDCO, MII sometimes. So the government is a great high-risk investor. There's no one else quite like them. So in order to prepare for that, you have to register, you have to have your company set up properly. It's not hard to do. It's just something most people aren't familiar with. And so we help do that, or we get people, teach people how to do that. And it's a small hurdle, but very significant. I think, as Chris said, you can't really bid unless you're registered, and registering is a bit painful, but possible. So we teach people how to do that, register on SAM and other things like that. But mostly it's the interaction. I meet with the Shuriken group every Thursday afternoon, except today we don't have a meeting. Jeff comes to the meetings. Sometimes one of the MDC original partners comes. So it's mostly a process of engagement on the part of the participants like Cliff and Arman and Chris. And then our side, we have to be engaged also. So there's nothing magical about it. It's just effort, and that works. So yeah, maybe Jeff could comment a little bit on his work in the other company, Numico, for example, or vascular rescue, whatever you want to say.
You want me to talk about how, like, the mechanics of the process, or the engineering, or just?
Well, just how you got involved. Let's say with Numico, we did the I-Core, we did NSF, et
Yeah. So there was an early prototype when they started. We got an NSF phase 1, and I managed all of the technical work for that phase 1, all of the studies, did all of the data analysis and the design iterations. I was the entrepreneurial lead for all of I-Core for that company, which taught us a whole lot of things about what we were building and why we were building it, who would buy it, and resulted in a pivot, and then came up with a new technical strategy and commercialization pathway in response to those findings. So yeah, lots of moving parts, definitely, but continuity is, I think, important for that. You know, there's a lot of spots for errors when you hand things off from one person to another. So one person's doing the technical and they're not involved in the customer discovery. That could be a problem. Somebody does the customer discovery but isn't involved in, like, the authoritative process of deciding what direction to take the company in. That could be a problem. Yeah, I think it was really good. It was a great experience.
Thank you, Gil and Jeff. So you guys have referred to MDC a few times. What would you say, I guess in general, you know, what are the pros and cons of joining a startup studio for other people who might be curious?
I can go, say a little bit. I think it goes back to the fact that, you have to look at your team, the inherent makeup of it, and what do you need. For us, we had a great amount of clinical experience, a little bit of engineering experience, but then you have to look, okay, what's missing, right? You're just trying to fill the rest of the bucket. And that for us was especially that really designed for manufacturing type engineering support, and that business support, and that HR support. And, I'll give another example. When we were doing those government registrations, the government, they actually changed up their system in the middle of our registration, which caused a huge issue, and it caused us to have issues with our SBIR submission. And, between the two physicians and then, me in medical school, we just didn't really have the time to be trying to figure out what's going on and sit on, hold and phone calls with the government. And so, we had MDC support and people who had gone through this process who were able to help take care of that for us. And again, it's just these small, low hanging examples that I think prove to us the value. Or like when we were writing that SBIR, we've never done that. And it's like a 70-page document. We can write that, we can write the technical details and the scientific background of it. But when it comes down to getting everything in shape and together, Ineo has this amazing folder of templates that she gives us that it made that process so much easier. Like, I don't even want to know how miserable it would have been without that sort of guidance. So I just throw those examples, and I'm sure Dr. Weiss and Bailey have more to add.
Yeah, I think most importantly, joining a studio helped give us structure. Certainly, if we had more extensive, experience with starting companies and actually building prototypes and all of the different pieces that come into it, a studio approach maybe wouldn't have been for us. But given our level and where we were, we needed that structure and guidance and mentorship. I actually don't think we would be anywhere near where we are right now if we didn't go that route.
Great. So I would like to know, what are your goals as physician entrepreneurs? What are your near-term and long-term goals for yourselves?
So, it's an interesting concept, right? So I think there are more and more physician groups or physicians coming out that are trying to build devices and move them forward. Some are doing it for intellectual reasons, some are doing it for financial reasons, and I think we're somewhere in the middle of that. I think our immediate goal is to get this prototype working enough that we can get it. I mean, really short term is to get it into some animals and make sure it works, and to move this out as the first line of product that we can do as a group. I think we're enjoying the interaction, and we have new ideas bouncing around, some in this space, some in other spaces. Jeff came to the interventional suites the other day and observed and watched us flail around for a while and came up with some good ideas. And I think for me, in truth, I've been doing my job in Hopkins for a really long time. I'm 26 years in. I'm 13 years on faculty. I'm a professor. I've gotten to where I need to go academically. I'd like to now start making a bunch of things that, and a lot of my work clinically has been, and from a research perspective, has been designing, new procedures and new devices to go into patients. And I think that's what for me personally, I'd like to be focusing on for the next 10 years is doing what we just did serially. I don't really need another grant. I don't really need another paper. I'm not going to stop doing those things, but what I really want to do is I want to make devices. And every day we bounce around in the lab and talking to people. There are students that come through with great ideas, and I'd love to figure out the formula to kind of get those off the ground. And for us, the last 2 years, we needed the resources and the backing of MDC to do that. And so I think for me, my goal in the long run, in the next 10 years, is to have 2 to 3 things that actually make it into people, whether it's fully marketed and licensed or whether it's actually been acquired or we've made a company. I don't have that answer yet, but I'd like to see 2 or 3 of our devices actually used clinically, and making a difference in patients' lives.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I mean, I'm much junior to Cliff. I'm assistant professor, just started, but I always thought going into academics that I would try the traditional pathway of, doing, clinical translational research within this field and eventually kind of building up my career that way. But again, through this experience, I've found something that's it's fun. I mean, it's at the end of the day, it's actually a lot of fun to not only do our work, but then think about how we can do it better. And then instead of just saying, oh, wouldn't it be great if this existed? Like, just once we finish a clinical day, I mean, we did it yesterday just for fun, like sketch out some drawings of some things that we thought might be interesting and see if it has legs. So, in the short term, I want to keep doing this. In the long term, in addition to Cliff's goal, I would love to see some of our work actually become clinical reality. But I would love to take it to the next level and eventually be able to mentor other people if we're successful, and help other people through their journey of setting up their own startups and seeing some of their bioengineering projects come to full fruition.
Great.
Yeah, I think it just comes down to, like Chris said, fun. And, if Chris is junior, then I'm an infant. So I have, a ways to go in my career. But what I've found, even through those, limited years of, the research I've done or startups is this is stuff I look forward to. I love medicine. And, the fact that I had, can come off a day of classes and just look forward to working on this project or look forward to going to the MDC lab and getting to try out, those ideas that have just been floating through my head during the day on, how do I want to fix this experiment or how do I want to do the next one? So I really truly believe in it's, doing what I love, and this is what it is. At this point, I've tried, other forms of research, maybe not super extensively, but all roads have pointed me to this. And long-term goals. I spent some time a few years ago working for an orthopedic company designing some implants as an engineer, and it was great. Very fulfilling. You're making things that have a difference in patients' lives. But what I found was missing were those patients. I enjoyed doing all the CAD work and the design and the testing, but I wanted to be the one who could go to a patient and make that actual difference in their life. So my personal goal is to take something that I've designed or developed, with the team and be able to see that within a patient, just as Dr. Weiss and Dr. Bailey said. I think it just brings a whole level of fulfillment and satisfaction that it's hard to get in other ways.
Great, thank you. So I'd like to know, what would you say is the best thing and the worst thing that has happened to your company so far?
I don't think there's a lot of worst right now. I mean, that'll come. Honestly, I think this has been a really fun journey. I can imagine worsts, but we haven't really experienced those. Even the fact that our first prototype actually worked enough to tell us what to do next, we really have been doing okay. I think maybe the worst is a double MII submission without an acceptance. That's grantsmanship. I mean, that's just life. Nothing too bad.
Yeah. Okay, so oh yes, go ahead, Chris.
Oh no, I would echo the same. I can't really think of a bad thing. Yeah, I'd say pointing with our MII, but I mean that's part of the game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So my last question before we open it up for Q&A is, what are 3 concrete things physicians and other busy individuals can do right now to start to launch a company?
Talk to your colleagues would be number one. The physician entrepreneur is not a scarce thing, and especially at academic institutions, there's a lot of people who are, who have something or some experience with it. So I hope we've echoed throughout this, the only way that we could have made this possible was mentorship from a variety of sources. So just get out there and talk to other people who are doing it.
I would say from a different perspective, if you're a clinician, what you do every day has things that work really well and things that work really poorly. And it's really, really hard for you to necessarily see what works poorly. If you do, that's great. And you should write it down and put it aside, even if you don't have a solution to the problem. Even better, bring people in who don't know what the hell you're doing and have them ask you questions. Why did you just do that? I'm sure, Chris and I work in a field where everything is technology dependent. We don't use a scalpel. we're supposed to use stethoscopes, but I don't think we do it much anymore. And so our lowest tech device, we can do nothing without turning on some type of imaging system, pulling devices off the shelf and using them. Most of them haven't been changed since the mid 80s or the late 70s, right? So there's inherent innovation there. So I guess my statement is from the clinical side, think about what isn't working, or find someone who can help you think about what's not working and then work from there. And then really go through the discovery process of understanding, be willing to kill things quickly, even if, like right now, if we realize that this thing didn't work, we could kill it. I mean, that would just be what we would have to do and move on. Because you hate to be, 18, you hate to have a technology that's looking for a solution. You'd rather have a problem that's looking for a technology. And, I would say, kill it quickly and move would be the other thing I would say. Not that we've had to do that yet, but I've had to do that in the past with other devices. And when they have to die, they have to die, and you got to move on.
Yeah. Ariman, would you like to add one more?
Yeah, I like to add like a little bit of a different, suggestion, and that is don't be afraid of involving students. I think sometimes, it's that lack of experience might be a little scary, but I'd say it's hard pressed to sometimes find people who are more driven or more motivated to learn. Especially graduate students or late undergraduate students. It might take a little bit of training, but I really do think they can add a valuable perspective. Sometimes it's the people who have less clinical experience who can come in and shine a different light on what you're trying to do. So I would just advocate, I think, for my fellow group of students that they really are willing to learn and step up and put in the work.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cliff, Chris, and Ariman. So I want to open it up for a Q&A. Feel free to jump in with a question.
This is Wayne. I have a quick question. Who's the ninja of your group that came up with the company name?
So neither Chris nor his co-resident would let us start a company unless it was named Shuriken. And yeah, so yes, we're a bunch of adults that act like children. So we were forced to name it Shuriken. In fact, all of our subsequent projects will be named after Japanese fighting weapons.
Oh, great.
We came up with the dojo yesterday. That was pretty good.
Dojo, yeah. No, it actually became a running joke before we actually found something that was interesting. Me and my colleague Andrew Demert, who's not here, but he is one of the original founders, would go to Cliff actually in between cases and just pitch him the most ridiculous thing, and we'd say, it's we're gonna call it the Shuriken, and it's running things.
And then one day they came to me like this. I'm like, whoa, no, that's the Shuriken. Makes no sense, has no clinical relevance at all, but we're gonna do it.
Yeah, I was actually wondering that, so I'm glad Wayne asked that question.
Thanks for that answer. I just wanted to chime in about student use, and I roger that. And one of the things that I found was very useful when we were doing our startup was we had a lot of, I hate to use the term, but grunt work that needed to be done. And I actually contracted with a team at my alma mater at University of Michigan and said, here's a task statement for you, run free with it, give me a product. We met every other week or so, and it worked out beautifully. So I roger that as well.
Absolutely. No, I totally agree with that sentiment. And, grunt work might have a bad kind of connotation to it, but that's how you learn. I mean, that's how I learned, both through what I did at Duke and the early part of this company. So.
Speaking of students, I wanted to add, there's a group of students, graduate students and postdocs at WashU. I don't know if you guys have heard of them, the Balsa group, BALSA. So they serve as consultants. So on the side of their, student work, they do consulting projects for companies, and they're extremely affordable. It's actually a nonprofit, so they don't get paid. The money goes to local entrepreneurs in the St. Louis area. So if you guys have like market research projects or something else they could help with, check it out. They're a really cool group to work with.
Awesome. Thanks for letting us know. That's pretty cool.
I
Yes.
do have one question. Could you please talk a little bit more about your licensing experience with JHTV as you brought your product out to the company?
Actually, we can't because right now we haven't licensed it. So that would be a great question for us in a future.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who has some tips on having a good licensing experience with technology ventures in an academic center?
I think Nail can talk about her experience at Hopkins. I've worked with a lot with people at College Park. They have completely different rules in College Park, and then also with University of Maryland, Baltimore, different rules. So each place is quite different. Baltimore is pretty friendly to us because a lot of their key inventors are partners in MDC. So we tend to get a pretty good deal. We do offer equity in our startups, and the inventors who are doctors at Baltimore get half that back. So it's a pretty good deal at Baltimore. College Park, if you invent something on your own time, you own the whole thing, no matter who you are. It's wonderful. Sadly, not everybody's like that. Johns Hopkins is a more rigorous process. They have reasonably high expectations, and it's a very professional organization. I think Neo has been working with them for a few months. Maybe you can comment about your experience.
Yeah, so for my startup, we've executed an exclusive option to license technology. So I work with a very nice person at Johns Hopkins Tech Ventures. And so, we went back and I think I talked to them for quite a while, maybe even over a year until we signed anything. But yeah, I think, it was basically, I wasn't trying to negotiate hardball, but I said, we literally don't have this much to pay in upfront fees right now, even though we want to. So eventually, we were able to work out something that was quite affordable for us for at least for the option. And we're now starting to think about the converting that into an exclusive license. So here, I've started talking to an IP attorney who's been really, really helpful because this is all, I'm pretty naive about this process. So it's been well worth it for me to, get some advice from an attorney who has experience.
I would really appreciate now if you have any recommendations for an IP attorney. I know I have a couple of friends in DC who work in the field, but if you know someone in Baltimore, that would be perfect.
Oh yeah, I'll follow up with you.
Thanks.
Any other questions?
Thank you for your feedback.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Well, Cliff, Chris, and Ariman, thank you so much. This was really, really insightful. It was great to hear your experience, and I really look forward to seeing how you guys progress. Actually, let me share. Hold on. Yes, sorry, I'm trying to pull up the the slide for next time. There we go. So next time is May 19th at 4 p.m. We'll have Janine Boyle. Something went wrong. Anyway, we'll have Janine Boyle. She will speak to us about how health policy can affect entrepreneurs and startups. So thank you, everyone, and have a good night. Bye.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, everyone.
Thanks, bye.